Hey there, folks. Welcome to Spectrum Pulse. We talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And today, we're going to be talking about the newest album from Rae Jepsen called Dedicated. So I'll admit to being kind of surprised it took this long to get this album. And sure, some of this comes as a question of momentum, which for a cult act like Rae Jepsen might not matter. And I'll admit it's a little strange to refer to her as a cult act when in 2012 Call Me Maybe was nearly the biggest song of that year, but seems to mostly have vanished from even more of a nostalgic conversation. But I remember actually being ahead of the curve when it came to emotion and covering it here, where I covered it as a fan of her earlier stuff that was pretty fond, and then saw the hipster crowd embrace her in spades, which carried into her short follow-up the next year on Side B, which was also really good. And then, well, the singles kept coming, the hype was there, but the reception felt increasingly lukewarm, and it wasn't like mainstream pop was in the best of places for the sort of crossover she probably deserved earlier. So when I started hearing the rather mixed reception for this album, I'll admit to being kind of worried, especially with no credits from Josh Ramsey or Devontae Hines. But still, I am still a fan, and I wanted to believe she could stick the landing, so what do we get from Dedicated? Well, you know, the more listens I've given this album, I feel like Rae Jepsen's probably in an impossible situation with this album, dealing with a compromised mainstream pop situation without obvious sources of influences that I should add were always pretty strident on her last project, and with sky-high expectations of quality, she was likely forced with a pretty hard choice. On the one hand, she could stick with the same sounds and influences and fall in the same trap that Churches did, while probably still being pretty successful, at least in the mainstream adjacent scene, or she could fly off into the experimental fringe, risk a potentially mixed critical reception, and potentially even compromise her cult following. And with Dedicated, it seemed like she tried to thread the needle and do both. It's certainly more experimental and modern in terms of its influences in synthpop, but those influences are still prominent if you know what to look for, and even a few stabs at satisfying a pretty fickle mainstream. Now what I'm trying to say is that Dedicated can't help but feel like it's trying to satisfy a few too many people, with a few too many cooks in the kitchen, maybe taking away from what Rae Jepsen can deliver at her best. It's kind of flabby as a whole, but oddly undercooked in some patches, but still with enough raw quality coursing through it, so while it might be underwhelming to some audiences, I think it might be actually a step towards something that she needed to take. It's in the right direction, but where that direction is going, I'm a little unsure. But one thing's very important to acknowledge right from the start. If you're expecting to push a lyrical innovation, or a step to push this album towards greatness in that direction, you're gonna be left wanting, and I'll admit this was a problem for me. Don't get me wrong, I like the slew of genuinely sweet love songs that she loads this album with, but if you're asking for something to shoot for the stars with some big drama like Run Away With Me, or even something that plays for the over-the-top girlish exuberance of I Really Like You, you're not really gonna get it. The relationship songs, they're on this album. When they are here, they're more stable and assured. And while Rae Jepsen is an expert at making lovesick yearnings sound buoyant, more than ever, there are some limitations in her lyrical range and themes that prevent her from going much further. I might love the frustrated exasperation of the sound and how she might want more than beyond the lip service, but her attempt to sell jealousy and I'll be your girl is utterly unconvincing, and the underlying core of sweetness doesn't quite let right words, wrong time work. Not so much innocence, the sensuality is implied, but it is there, and I do appreciate it, but there is a good-natured cheer and relative purity to these tunes that actually manages to make the sensitivity of how she's not ready for a new love affair on Happy Not Knowing feel like more than just a friend zone song, and a big part of this is the vocal delivery and the production, where there is absolutely a tilt towards some thicker vocal layering, some slightly more intricate harmonies, a lot more cooing, and a lot less belting. And when the production embraces some slightly softer synth embellishments, or lets the grooves feel a little bit smoother, it is a welcome shift. But that doesn't excuse the moments where she gets pitchy, like on the hook of Feels Right, but it does kinda make more sense why that does happen. But you know what? If you're looking for a reason why that pitchiness comes in and does become a bit of an issue, as well as some tinny vocal pickups and layering, we gotta get into the larger conversation about the production. And I've been pondering the best way to describe vibe, the choice of grooves and tones that comprise a lot of the sound. But the truth is, it's kind of a mixed bag and pulls from a lot of different places, with the synths carrying the blaring tone of early Churches, with some of the oscillating wobble and spare support of the last Sophie album, albeit not mastered in a way that makes me want to break things. And that's not counting the songs where the sonic influences are really blatant, like how the groove of Feels Right sounds like a Marianas Trench song circa 2015, or how Jack Antonoff's production makes Want You in My Room sound like a forgotten 2014 Bleacher song, and on that note, one of the best cuts here. But on the flip side though, you get tunes like Everything He Needs, that's liberal interpolation of a Harry Nilsson song written for the early 80s Popeye movie that's just as shrill, misguided, and clunky as that movie, and that's where we get the despair, drippy snap behind right words, wrong time. That's a blatant radio push. Or the weird, blurry ska and funk blend that feels weirdly reminiscent of some Trench-era 21 Pilots, except a lot worse. But most of the songs, they rely on a pulsating low-end synth with various degrees of textured percussion, glittery embellishments, and an open question how well the vocals will be able to ride off of all of it. And if I were to highlight a pretty significant misstep, it would probably come here. Simply put, if you're looking to fuse Carly Rae Jepsen's very breathy tones into a compelling mix, you want tones that complement them or support them, not so blaring that you need to crank up the mids and highs in the mix for the vocals and make her sound so tinny to cut through, especially when it might be done at the expense of the color and the other instrumental tones like the guitar or the bass. But a larger issue might actually come in the structure of some of these pop songs, because many of these tunes, they've got the hooks to earn a bigger climax coming off the bridge or the synth solo for a final hook, and then they just don't happen, which leaves songs like Automatically in Love and even Want You in My Room feel like they might be missing something. And when you hear how many really good songs that Carly Rae Jepsen probably wrote for this album, you're left wondering if refinement and expansion might have been more of the answer over just sheer quantity. But as a whole, yes, this album does not have the highs of her best work. Want You in My Room and The Sound, they're not Run Away With Me or All That. And a song like Everything He Needs, it does have one of her deepest lows. But I suspect this project is necessary if only because it cements Carly Rae Jepsen as a synth-pop act who will have the flexibility to experiment and flirt with ideas while still having a pretty solid enough core. And given how Emotions Side B gave us more of the recording sessions of that previous album, I'm curious what else might have come out of this, likely in a tighter package. If she's gonna go in the Robin route, I can at least appreciate that. But as it is, extremely light 7 out of 10, recommended for the fans, but I do have other pop-friendly acts with tighter grooves and better hooks that I would probably revisit before this that are stronger from this year. Still though, it's a good album. I will take that. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you'd like to like and subscribe, I'd be more than grateful. Yes, I am currently back from Sonic Temple. I'm working on putting together a recap video and a bunch of reviews of the concerts I saw there, so stay tuned for that. And beyond that, hey, this album's still pretty good though. If you want to buy or stream it, links down there below. And I got the poll up there how the fans think about this one, because I can see this being pretty divisive. Beyond that, anything else I might be able to do to improve my presentation, I'm all ears. And just a friendly reminder that if you're looking for Billboard Breakdown dropping tonight, the link is on my new channel. So I've been saying it for the past couple of months now. Link's over here in the side card over there. Please go check it out and subscribe. But till then, I'm Mark, you're watching Spectrum Pulse, and I'll see you next time.